Hi, welcome again back to Curse of Geek. I just dragged Tamashi into my private little library here. He got a little spooked out in the hallway. What can I say? I hang out with vampires, werewolves, and a few devils on occasion. You're gonna run into some spooky shit in here.
I mean, I didn't expect that I'll be dragged in a place that actually would have spooky books. I mean, a lot of people talk about how books actually have a nice thing or theme to it. You can never go wrong with reading books until you read the kind of books that she reads. Also, this time around, remember. Oh yeah, I'm trying to be less scatterbrained. So, hi, I'm Tamashi. Wait, did I introduce myself a bit too early or wait, what? Did I?
No, you're fine. And yes, we're keeping this in the, the recording. Yes,
Oh god.
we're making you keep this in.
I
So,
mean, I was going to try and be more professional, but read enough of her books, and yeah, your brain will be even more scattered than mine.
oh, come on. It's not that bad. Though, in which
Hey,
case,
you have otherworldly books. It shouldn't a mortal shouldn't have those books.
who
It's for
said
the love of God
who
or
said any
gods in this occasion.
who said anything about being mortal?
Excuse me. How long have I known you? And now you're telling me this?
I'm a witch. What did you expect? What did you expect?
Oh God.
Well,
Anyways,
anyway, speaking of books, that'll bring us to our first topic for the second half of Spooktober, which is horror novels and some of the best ones out there. Now, Tamashi, have
oh
you
yeah,
read
just
any horror
fitting that we're
novels?
actually book. Well, not novels as much as small books, but I'm guessing it's more into the kids genre compared to your kind of books.
Oh, entirely fair on that one. How about you go first?
Well, okay, I guess let's start light for for people before shocking them with your collections. Um, okay, so if any of you have tuned into our previous episode, episode one, um, let me think. We did mention a few books that are within the spooky section when it comes to stories or different things. There are oh yeah, I would actually go with Goosebumps, the Goosebumps series.
Oh, the actual
We
books or
s-
compared to the show.
oh definitely. So we spoke about Goosebumps having I guess a few movies and a few shows. And now we're gonna talk about the fact that Goosebumps actually started in books. Also, just a quick note here. Goosebumps actually had a video game, by the way, back in the day for PC.
Oh, I didn't know that. Well, no, I did.
Yeah,
I heard about it from one of my favorite video game reviewers a while back. It had Jeff Goldblum in it of all things. It was funny.
okay, that's an information I did not know that he was in that game. But
Yeah,
let
he
me
played
tell you this
Dracula. It was kind of goofy.
for real.
Yeah, for real. He played Dracula. It's kind of hilarious. He was kind of half-assed in it, but it was funny to watch. It's so hammy. I can't believe it sometimes. Seriously.
Beauty. My beauty.
Okay, you mentioning him playing Dracula makes me think of something. Um, there might be more than one game. One second, let me double check this.
I'm pretty sure that there is
Goosebumps.
more than one game.
Yeah, because the one I remember, Oh, definitely. Okay, there are more than one game because the one I remember had more a future ish style of thing in it where you're basically chased by let's okay, here we go. Here it is. It's Attack of the Mutants.
Oh, I think I heard of that one.
Yeah, it definitely was like a very memorable game. Also, the graphics in it are still good until this day. If you can get your hands on them games, it'll be fun. Also, it seems there is a Goosebumps Dead of Night game that is on the PlayStation 4. I just figured that out. Okay, that's more information for me while I'm trying to give you information. Isn't that wonderful? Anyways, back to the books. So when it comes to the books for the Goosebumps series, there are plenty to go through. And I believe also Goosebumps were, at least in my opinion, uh, some of the first that started multiple choice in books, believe it or not. Did you know any books that have multiple choices, by the way?
I
I mean,
did
aside
hear
from
about that.
studies.
I did hear about that.
Well, it was definitely something that was kind of interesting. It keeps the book a bit more fresh for a longer time, at least, in my opinion. They had very memorable stories, some that would scare you, some that would shock you, some that would really stick in your brain for a very, very, very long time. And there are multiple choice books. If I'm gonna like mention the method that they did is basically you would reach a certain page where that page then tells you like, okay, if you're gonna take this choice, turn the pages until the page number, like let's say 15, or turn your page until page, for example, 20, and so on, which is definitely something interesting. It keeps the stories kind of more fresh. Um, and one of the stories that I definitely loved the most reading about um, would be this one story that it's kind of sad, to be quite honest, but it kind of stuck with me for a while, which is the one where you're basically like experiencing things from the point of view of a small girl that then is told, or not told, it's more of she's having this thing where it's like she believes one of the boys, or like a specific boy, is a ghost. Like throughout the story, she believes that he's a ghost because he keeps disappearing and so on. But they still kind of develop a very good relationship and friendship of sorts between the two. And before I continue here, I am gonna give a quick spoiler warning.
A spoiler warning
Um,
for a how many year old book?
well, still, people might want to pick up Goosebumps.
I suppose that's fair.
Okay, so a spoiler warning here. If you want, you can skip forward. It turns out the girl was actually a ghost, and her family actually perished in a fire. And it seems her coming back had a purpose, and that purpose is actually saving that boy that she befriended and so on, from actually having the same fate as she actually did. So, yeah, basically, like that was a bit of a sad story. Had different spooky aspects to it, like why she actually believed the boy was a ghost, just for it to turn around and tell you, oh, actually, the girl is the ghost. I actually love that story. I've read it so many times.
All right. Well, from there, then let's get into more adult fare then, since we've tackled some of the kids' stuff. Just
Why did that feel like you're calling me a kid for some reason?
I'm not. Adults can enjoy fiction for children just as much as the kids themselves. Sometimes it's nice. Heck, one of my favorite series that was authored for kids is actually very similar to the Goosebumps style. It was by Disney for the Haunted Mansion. I really love that ride. So when they came out with a Goosebumps style themed series that had the main character start off the anthology inside of the Haunted Mansion, hearing these spooky tales, and then you find out that the whole time, and this is a spoiler for the series, that the whole time the person involved was actually trying to find the spirit of their sister who was lost and is now permanently a ghost in the haunted mansion with her friends who also died. It was kind of a fun little series. A good, kind of lighthearted spook. Now, if you want to talk about something a little bit more meaty, then there's always Stephen King and a couple other notable horror authors. I've read a fair amount of King's works, mostly Salem's Lot and The Shining. Both very good novels. Salem's Lot was actually Stephen King's first ever horror novel that he wrote, which is basically, in a lot of ways, a modern retelling of the story of Dracula, if you really look at it. And it's quite a fascinating read. And I still find it as a good book to read for October. It's a good little curl up by the like the I'm struggling with my words. It's a a good little book to curl up next to like a small light and just chill in like relative darkness and kind of grow interested with what's going on in the background. Sometimes King's style can be a little bit hard to follow at times, but you get used to it. I actually kind of almost prefer The Shining a little bit more. I still haven't finished it yet, but it's a good read, and I can see why so many people like it. And there is a difference between the novel and the book, and I can see why the novel and the movie that the Kubrick came out with. I can see why King wasn't exactly a fan of what Kubrick did. But that's the whole thing with movies and books. They're often their own distinct entities rather than just one translates completely into the other. The Shining is more about the interaction with a young boy named Danny and his supernatural ability to shine or see ghosts, and the impact of being in a haunted hotel on his family and the dynamics there. It's quite a fascinating read.
Okay, I have to ask, what's with hotels being haunted? I mean, I did have I guess personally two interactions with hotels, one in Japan and one Korea, where it was definitely, uh, let's say, not as natural as I would hope it to be. And it definitely kept me up all night. So did you have any like, so look, as you actually mentioned, I only know this, to be honest, because of the movie Ready Player One, that the I guess the writer or the creator of The Shining hated his creation, aka The Shining, because of the movie, I guess. I'm not sure, like, I guess what you said kind of confirms that.
We gotta remember the clue. A creator who hates his own creation. The Shining.
Yeah, Stephen King notoriously was not very happy with how Kubrick handled the adaptation. the book and the movie are quite two different entities, especially when it comes to the endings and whatnot. But I'm not going to get into spoiler talk there because you need to read the book. I'm not going to go into full depth on that.
Yeah, I'm not going anywhere near that book. I mean, if the watered down version that was shown in Ready Player One was any indication of how spooky or scary the movie and the book might be, I'm steering away and just sticking to my goosebumps.
Entirely fair.
um, but I have to say this: when it comes to actually reading on spooky things, even though it does count in the realm of fantasy, it actually having a place in real life is what tends to sometimes attracts me. So anything that basically could, let's say, um, how can I say this, be traced to something in real life, that definitely grabs my interest more in a way. Especially if you think about it, every myth and every legend has a trace into something that happened in real life, probably something that people simply could not explain at the time. You know, like a lot of the science now used to be called magic back in the day.
I mean, that is very much true about things that in the modern day are commonplace being seen as magic by our ancestors. But that is how it often goes. Heck, some of the things that we do today might even be seen as blasphemous to our ancestors.
Yeah, I'm definitely not gonna be surviving. If I go back in time, I'm not surviving whatever world that was. I'd possibly be even crucified at one point.
Yeah, but let's not think about that. Which does bring
Yeah,
us to our next topic, which is spooky folklore and some of the monsters that are associated with it. So, there are whole different types of folklore out there. There are stories about monsters, there are stories about events, there are stories even about places that maybe one shouldn't go because of the associations that they have. And it all depends on region. One of the more universal folklore that's out there is that of the vampire. Several cultures have myths associated with the vampire that isn't like the classic Romanian European one that we're all pretty much aware of in fiction. There's so many different actual variants that have sprung out from either ancient beliefs like that in like Mesopotamia, where uh, a lot of the demons from their associated myths, like Lilith, were said to have a habit of eating human flesh and drinking human blood because of their association with attacking children or even young women. Moving on to, say, ancient Greece, the Lamia was often associated with, can be associated with vampires because of their need to prey on children, drinking blood. One of my personal
actually,
favorites is actually the Chinese version, though I could say that the Chinese Jiangxi is more closely associated with that of the zombie rather than the vampire, at least at face. Because with the Jiangxi, it starts with a sorcerer coming to get the body of someone who died in the wrong hometown. So they come at night, raise the corpse, and have a seal placed upon the face of the individual so to keep the corpse obedient to them as they walk them home. But if something goes wrong with either the family that asked the sorcerer to bring their loved one home, or something happens to the sorcerer and the seal is ripped off of the corpse's face, then the Jiangxi becomes a raging beast and goes around consuming the life force of its unfortunate victims until put down.
Well, that definitely goes against what some, I guess, anime kind of showed me, where it's like when the seal is removed, the thing basically dies or something. But I guess that was false.
It depends. There's a whole bunch of different versions. I looked up one online, but that's the thing about a world folklore. There are so many different variants of so many different types of monsters, and I do try to be respectful to them. But I love reading about them. The Irish Banshee is another, and that is associated with oftentimes the Fae, as the Banshee will show up as a warning of ill omen, oftentimes, to the Irish. Her wail hails death to whoever hears it, whether it is someone you care about or your own.
To be honest, I heard this thing like before I guess someone kind of, I guess, corrected me, or I'm not sure which, if it's a different version of the Banshee, that it's not that she comes and basically like as a warning or as a sign or omen that someone is gonna die, but more like if you actually hear her wails, then you basically are gonna die. But unless you manage to somehow block her wails, you're good in a way. But that's like a version I heard somewhere before. But I guess it was a bit of a false or maybe exaggerated version.
It depends. Some regions will have different variations on the myth. That's why it's folklore. It's not fully universal. It's not like that someone standardized these stories, but they all seem to have like the same theme. Because like another Irish myth, the Dullahan or the headless horseman. Some stories he can be a spirit of dread, attacking and assailing unfortunate passersby on the road, or in some cases, he can be helpful and actually help guide people to where they need to go and be protective. That's the thing about the Fae in the Irish mythos. You don't really want to mess with them, but if you manage to get on their good side, they'll be helpful to you.
Actually, this possibly isn't an Irish thing, but also an entity that is both deemed scary or let's say harmful, but also has a side of being helpful. I believe is the Baba Yaga.
Ah, yes. She's a Slavic myth, and there are several stories where she either takes the role of the villain or the role of the assistant to the hero. But you have to always be on your toes with her. You never know what version of Baba Yaga you're going to run into. And always be polite to her. That's one sure way, to, at least, to not get on her bad side, is to be polite and not outright try to be hostile to her.
However,
There's.
something that is constant, I guess, about her myth is the like her hut, I guess it's called,
Yeah, her
that
house.
has chicken legs.
Yeah.
Yeah, her house with chicken legs. So it would look like a giant house with giant chicken legs walking all over the place, in a way.
Well, and the other fact is that she's often pictured flying in a pestle and mortar, not on your traditional witch's broom.
Well, I would say she's not a traditional witch. I guess the closest I could go with describing her would be a hag from D&D, I guess.
I mean, she does have a stat block in D&D now, thanks to Tasha's Cauldron of Everything.
Well, that's definitely interesting. I didn't know that she was officially in D&D right now.
Yeah, it was a while back when Tasha's came out. There is a stat block for her. The thing is Tasha, the witch, is Baba Yaga's daughter in D&D. That's why you don't mess with Igwilf, because you know who her mom is.
Yeah, I am steering away from her as far as I can. Trevor has gone through enough curses and hags for a freaking lifetime.
Well, Igwilf, or Tasha, is a witch of pretty good renown in D&D. But I will say, you don't want to get on Igwilf's bad side. But unless your name is Gratz, you're at least going to have a fairly amenable relationship with Tasha if you don't accidentally make her angry.
Well, that's definitely something. um,
I
but
take
you
it.
did mention. Hmm?
I take it you don't know who Gratz is.
I have to admit, I have not the slightest clue.
We can get into more of his lore when we get to talking about maybe more D&D based lore eventually. But Gratz is the demon prince of self-indulgence and pleasure in the abyss, and as such, he has a very interesting relationship with Tasha the witch. As some centuries back, she kidnapped him and kept him trapped, basically in her basement, using him for spells and such. But from there, it became an interesting relationship of the two of them falling in love. So he kidnaps her, she kidnaps him. It goes on and on for centuries. I can't even explain just how hilarious that their relationship is. But that's
So you're telling
Tasha
me
for
he
you.
was kidnapped, developed a Stockholm syndrome, and fell in love with her.
Oh, certainly. And then he had to kidnap her back.
That's like if Bowser kidnaps Peach, she falls for him, and then she keeps kidnapping him, and him kidnapping her, and like, what the heck? Well, Mario's gonna have a field day. However, something I kind of want to kind of touch on as well. We've spoken about how some certain stories or certain creatures have, traces back into real life and stories and so on. And you mentioned vampires, and going from that, I do want to go into Dracula.
Oh, we're gonna go into classic horror monsters that people have heard about or seen around then, huh? Because there's more than just Drac to go over. There's Frankenstein's monster, there's the mummy, there's there's so many classics that you could go through. So do we want to start with Dracula then?
Hmm. Uh, yeah, I kind of want to go for Dracula about, I guess, his origin of sorts.
Sure.
If I guess you kind of know about it.
Oh, of course.
Okay. So I believe you've heard about Vlad the Impaler.
Oh, of course.
So if you don't mind me asking, what do you know about Vlad the Impaler so far?
That he was a prince of Wallachia who was trapped, who was not trapped, well, he was, but was taken and given to the Turkish government by his family. And when he returned, he wanted to protect the land that his family had been stewards of for generations. So he would fight back against the Turks in quite a interesting fashion. Some would call it a little much, but it got the point across to the Turks at the time because he wanted them to stay out of the region that we now know as Romania, though at the time it was called Transylvania. It was actually a real region, but was eventually dissolved into just being Romania. He would the name Vlad the Impaler comes from his particular method of trying to scare off the Turks before they even would arrive to some of the villages in Wallachia, where he would take some of the soldiers from the opposing army, stake them onto pikes, and have them be impaled. And the method of impaling is often considered a long, drawn out process of death, but it was effective in scaring off the Turkish Empire at the time because they were fighting against the Ottomans that were trying to invade. So, in a lot of ways, Vlad was seen as a hero for driving out the Ottoman Empire from the borders of Romania, though there are a lot of tales about how he would sit there and drink the blood of those he had slain via impaling, though some say that was mostly just rumor mongering to try and scare or frighten the Ottomans. When it reached the ears of the English, it was horrific enough to perhaps act as an inspiring piece to Bram Stoker when he was working on his Dracula novel. Though there are some disputes over the fact if Vlad was truly his inspiration for Dracula or not. It could have come at a later stage when he heard the stories, because early on in the novel, there's a section there where Dracula is talking about his family history, and if you know about Vlad's story, he talks very similarly to how you would expect Vlad Tepes to talk about what happened to him and the efforts that he took to defend his land and his people from the Ottoman Empire.
Also, another thing, I guess it kind of contributed into making him a bit of a vampire. Would be a medical condition, like a few medical conditions that he had. One, I guess I'm probably gonna butcher the pronunciation of it, is hemolacria, which is a rare condition that causes a person to produce tears that are partially composed of blood. So you can kind of think of him as crying blood.
I've heard of that, and I think you got the pronunciation right.
Well, I'm glad I got the pronunciation correctly. So,
Medical pronunciations are kind of hard.
oh, definitely. And reading a medical person's handwriting is near impossible for me. With all due respect to all the medical people out there, I have no idea what they teach you to how and how to write. You gotta teach me sometime.
You see, that's the funny
Um,
thing. When I was going to college, my professors would kind of complain about doctors' handwriting. It's like, you're not supposed to make it impossible for the script reader or the pharmacist to understand what the heck you're saying.
I mean, fact. Um, Also, I kind of saw a joke the other day, a bit of a joke video, where a man was sent by his doctor wife to actually buy groceries. He had to pass by the pharmacy first to actually get the thing translated, so he can actually go and buy the groceries. So yeah, when it comes to Dracula, basically the inspiration for him came from Vlad the Impaler. Also, Vlad the Impaler kind of made his debut in, I guess, a bunch of media sources, even in some animes as well. Um, like I guess Fate, the Fate series of anime. In one of them, he did make a bit of how can I say this? A bit of, I guess, a cameo, I guess, or so, like a show. There was one character that was based on him. Also, if anyone has seen the anime Hellsing, um, there is one part where basically it shows the Alucard, which is kind of the opposite way of reading the word Dracula, kind of transforms into something of a Vlad the Impaler. It shows like basically they do have him mentioned in anything that basically seems to be relating to Dracula. And I guess the origins that you mentioned about him being with the Ottoman um, was kind of mentioned in one of the latest movies. I think it's the latest movie that actually mentions Dracula, which is Dracula, the Untold Story, I think, um, where they basically call him, I guess, son of the dragon as well.
Yeah, that one they definitely out and out used Vlad the Impaler's story to a certain extent to influence the story.
So yeah, his deeds as well have been very famous of him as well being cruel in some occasions, but some of these stories could be fake as well, just like the him drinking blood. Because there have been some stories of, let's say, for example, a woman basically lying to him and telling him that she's pregnant with his child and so on. Turns out that she was lying, and he simply impaled her. So there are many stories, but he's very well known, I guess, for his um, portrayal as Dracula and as a vampire, and kind of not much regarded to the fact that he was kind of a national hero for Romania, as well as it's kind of funny that his like the thing that affects vampires and affects Dracula the most is, let's say, the Christian faith, where it comes like with crosses and so on being his weakness, while also people call him or like see him as also the defender of the Christian faith in some places, which is kind of ironic, in my opinion, at the very least.
Yeah, it all comes down to centuries old myth, rumor, and trying to divide fact from fiction. Heck, I've heard story that Vlad's body went missing, and that's why nobody knows where he is. So it adds more to the mythos of him being a vampire.
Also, I in some places of the world, their fear of vampires actually have them also put something like cages around the graveyards of people that they believe might be coming back as said vampires, as well as bells. But the bells, though, I kind of heard a different thing about people placing bells on gravestones, where the like they mentioned the bells are just in case someone got buried alive, because there are some medical conditions that mimic death, but it's very much a coma, where it could just lead to the person being buried alive without people knowing. Then the person kind of comes back from said coma just to find themselves underground, which is kind of a scary thing. So they install bells where the person that's buried can actually ring the bell that's somewhere near their gravestone, so they can hopefully dig them out in time. But the cages, however, placing cages on the graves themselves are, according to some people, a belief that to prevent vampires or even zombies from coming back to life, basically.
Yeah, which I've heard for some various cultures as well, wherein they will take certain measures when burying somebody to avoid them becoming a vampire. Like in Romania, they used to bury people face down in order to make sure that they wouldn't rise again as a vampire.
So wait, the person could be kind of tricked by them coming back to life and they would dig down instead of up? They'll definitely be a very interesting concept
I can't
of
remember the
things.
full explanation as to why it was face down in particular. I know it had something to do with like the soul being able to leave the body.
Well, absolutely fair. I mean, in many aspects and different cultures, there are certain cultures that believe that people can get possessed or like ghosts or spirits can enter your body through your toes, believe it or not, which is kind of interesting concept.
Fascinating. I
So
never heard of
maybe
that one before.
yeah, and in different cultures and so on, they believe that like spirits and so on can enter or leave the body through the toes of the person.
Interesting.
Okay, so going from the famous Dracula to the one, I guess I'm gonna call him second famous, which is Frankenstein's monster. Because for some reason, these two tend to be, I guess, mentioned together for quite some time. Also, I guess the third runner up to these two would be werewolves, I guess.
Yeah, the Wolf Man. The werewolf myth is pretty universal too.
I mean, it does kind of touch on different types of creatures and monsters of myth and folklore. They're all just, let's say, it's a simplified way, I guess, of explaining different, like the different types of them. It goes from different types of creatures that tend to shapeshift into animals, and they basically put them under the same umbrella and just call them werewolves of sorts. At least that's my opinion.
Yeah, every myth on some level or another always has some universality to it. The like I said with the myth of the vampire, I can't remember fully off the top of my head some of the other werewolf myths, but it's not just a European thing either. There are other stories from around the world of humans transforming into other creatures. Wolves are just one part. But to get back on topic with Frankenstein's monster, and that is the correct way to put it because everybody calls the monster Frankenstein. No, the Frankenstein is the name of the doctor that brought him to life.
Exactly. A lot, like I used to also call him Frankenstein for some reason, until like later on, I did realize that the Frankenstein is not the monster. The monster didn't get an official name.
No, he's just
You
called the
know
creature or the monster. And his
exactly.
tale is quite sad, really.
Yeah, I would agree there. I would agree. I mean, no one wants to be brought back in the manner that the creature came back in.
Well, and if you really think about it, Dr. Frankenstein, was really a deadbeat dad. He brought this creature back into being basically a child at heart with an adult's body. The monster, had no concept of the world when he first woke up, nor did he understand how he looked to the rest of the world. So the rejection by other people, not least of which was basically his father, really hurt him in the long run. Even though in parts of the story where you're reading about the experiences of the monster, he really is a kind soul beat down by the world that can't accept him, which is unfortunate for him.
I
And
mean, that
the
kind of
ending
plays a
is
part. Yeah, sorry, continue.
and the ending is super sad because I guess people need a spoiler warning for a 100-year-old book at this point. But if you haven't read Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, then I'd recommend you go read it before continuing on at this particular section. So,
Exactly. Everything we mention here is not the full information. Everything we mention here is basically to the best of our knowledge. If you uh, catch any fancy to the stories, books, or creatures that we actually mention, I would say look into them. However, please keep this in mind because there are different occasions and instances of people kind of losing themselves in the fact that these monsters are or creatures are actually purely fictional and going a bit too much into the deep end of believing said things to be true and basically causing harm to themselves or to others. So please keep that in mind and please continue, Luna.
well, as I was saying, with the ending of Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, it's really quite sad because Victor, the doctor, goes to the Arctic to hunt down the monster, and the monster ends up killing him and then walking off to live a solitary life in the Arctic. Now, some of the things that the monster does during the course of the story are quite horrific, but in essence, a lot of it is a scorned child lashing out at a parent that didn't give them love, which is quite sad if you really think about it. But the themes of that story are man's ability to play God and what happens when you do. But I also see, and this could just be my interpretation, but I also see themes of parenthood and what abuse looks like, or neglect in this case, which is also a form of abuse, can do to a person. Because the doctor had every chance to try and show the monster real compassion, real love, but he never did because he was too disgusted by what he had made, which isn't the monster's fault. You made him because you wanted to play God. You didn't understand the forces you were meddling with, and now you have basically a child in an adult's body following you around, looking for love, and being constantly and consistently rejected. That does a lot of damage to a person.
I mean, that is actually absolutely true. It does touch on a certain level of parenthood, as you've mentioned, and you do have a point. But also another scary, I guess, point of it. At least this is how I kind of see it. Is it kind of also indicates that a soul, basically, that leaves a body? Because I don't think a human can create a soul or create actually new life. The best that humans or like, mortals like us can actually do is, I guess, kind of animate a vessel for a soul. And it's either, like, if you think about it, it's either maybe a soul of a child that actually possessed or entered the body of the monster or the creature. I'm gonna call it creature at this point because I believe monster maybe is a bit much for a creature that could be gentle in a way. Um, is either the spirit of a child, or you could go with the concept that possibly every soul almost gets like resetted, like a reset, uh, once it goes back to where it came from in a way. At least in the universe of that book or that story. And if I am gonna mention as well some, I guess, mentions of the Frankenstein's monster. Frankenstein's monster has as well made a lot of appearances in a lot of let's say media. as well. And it seems a lot of it is side by side with either vampires or Dracula for a good chunk of them, honestly.
Yeah. Um.
I mean, we could go with this like okay, let's start nice and easy, I guess, with the cartoon, I guess. um since I'm not much on the spooky side of things, and then we're gonna build up to the more serious adult side of it. We can go with basically Hotel Transylvania, where we got Frankenstein's monster, basically. Oh yeah, and a quick mention for Frankenstein monster's bride. I
Oh,
believe there was also like some stories about the doctor actually making a bride for the monster.
well, in the actual novel, he starts to but never finishes. So the Universal monster movies made the bride an actual entity. So that's completely a Hollywood invention. Whereas in the book, she never got completed. But it was a request from the monster in the book to have a companion that wouldn't turn away from him for his appearance. And for a myriad of reasons, the doctor stopped and destroyed his second work.
Yeah, that's actually kind of, to be honest, quite a sad thing. For a creature that wanted at least something of love and attention to one point of it. Um, but also going from Hotel Transylvania, let's go a bit older here. I'm not sure if many remember this show. I'm low-key kind of looking for it as we're talking. It's about a bunch of teenagers. I guess they're the kids of Dracula and the other monsters. Here we go. It's the Drac Pack, Drakpack.
That's a new one.
Um, yeah, it's it's really old. It's basically a 16 episode series that came out back in the early 80s, believe it or not. And I watched it, and that basically tells you how old I am. I'm really old. Um, it basically speaks of the descendants of Dracula, Frankenstein's monster, and a werewolf. Um, like basically going around trying to be something of superheroes of sorts and helping people, which was kind of funny and interesting.
That does sound
Um,
funny.
Also, I believe another, let's say, small mention, I guess, to Frankenstein's monster would be also in the Adams family with their
Actually,
butler.
oh yeah, with the Lurch. However, if you want one that's a little bit more direct, you can't go wrong with the Munsters because that's a more direct translation. As you have the father of the family basically being Frankenstein's monster, and then the grandpa is Dracula. Quite
Oh
literally, the
yeah,
grandpa
okay.
is Dracula.
Yeah, it's a 1964 sitcom that came out back then. It's it came out in two seasons actually.
Yeah, it
Wowzers.
was a fun
Okay.
watch.
um, it seems. Wait, is this guy still around? No. Okay. He kind of looks like someone. Which is Fred Gu-
Fred Gwynn?
Gwynn. Yeah.
Yeah,
He kind of reminds me of this one judge. He kind of looks like him in a sort of way.
interesting.
I guess his name Herman
Yeah, Herman
or something
Munster
like that.
is Frankenstein's monster in that show.
Oh, okay,
Um,
that's Frankenstein monster. I'm trying to remember the name of the judge, but there is a judge currently that Loki kind of looks like him. Like the faces are very uncanny resemblance between them. Um, However, now going to a bit, I guess, more serious. unless you want to add some more.
No, I'm
Uh, so if we're gonna go also now to the a bit more serious, I guess, mentions of Frankenstein's monster. You got I Frankenstein, I believe they called the movie.
yeah. It was a more serious kind of action horror flick. I know it didn't get reviewed well, but I saw it in college on a date. It was a fun ride.
It definitely was fun. And touching then on the more gentle side of Frankenstein's monster, his portrayal in Van Helsing. You gotta love his character in the movie, to be honest.
I do love that movie for a myriad of reasons, not least of which is the actor who played Dracula. I loved his take on it. I'm not of the opinion that it was a horrible movie. I really do love uh, Van Helsing for what it is. I think it deserves more love than it got. And honestly, I like that they gave the monster more of the heart that he had in the book, where he's this more sad, more tragic figure. I also like that unfortunately the doctor was not a deadbeat dad, but he died. Yeah,
Well, that's kind of sad.
spoilers for like the first 5 minutes of the frickin' movie.
Also, I want to say in the movie Van Helsing, I love their design for the werewolves.
I liked
The
the
werewolf
trans.
design, I
Yeah,
loved it.
I liked the transformation design because it was kind of the opposite of what you'd seen from Hollywood at the time. Whereas like the wolf would come out of the person, and I love American Werewolf in London and the transformation sequence in there from Rob Bottin. Uh, I really liked the interpretation of instead of the wolf pushing out and revealing itself from within, that the the person would dissolve off of them to reveal the wolf.
I mean, yeah, a lot of transformations now when it goes to the werewolves is them basically ripping off the human and turning into the wolf. Basically, like it's almost like the beast just ripping away its human part and revealing its true self. And thinking just now, because of the so many gifs that I've seen lately of Strad, I would say the portrayal of Dracula and Van Helsing looks a lot like how the 3D aspect or like the gifs and whatever of gifs or gifs of Strad actually look like.
You
So
mean
I
from the
guess
video game?
I didn't know Strad had a video game.
Well, it's not that he has a particular video game himself, it's that he has a level in an MMORPG known as Neverwinter. You have to be like level 60 to get to Barovia, but there is that, and it actually has influenced many DMs in how they run certain aspects of him when it comes to combat.
Well, that's definitely something I didn't know.
The trailer is
But
actually a really good opener for the campaign Curse of Strahd at base.
I mean, is it the one where it's like the smoke goes towards where his chair is or throne or whatever,
Yeah,
and he's just sitting there, then his face kind of transforms?
yeah, that's the very end of the trailer. I think that was out in, I want to say 2016. I could be wrong.
Well, absolutely fair. But I would say, like, now thinking about it, the actor in Van Helsing and him turning into the turning into basically the vampire form of Dracula of sorts, while he like whether he's human or turning into the vampire form, he looks a lot like Strad in that very scene, I guess, of the game.
Yeah, I would agree with that. How do we keep coming back to Strahd?
I don't know. I guess because we are getting hopefully. I guess because you and I are super excited about actually getting an extra level, hopefully in our next campaign and like next session of the campaign. Um, so we're getting a bit excited, and possibly this video would come out or this episode would come out a bit later the week after we get the level up. So yeah, wish us luck to survive that long, hopefully.
Look, if Strahd had not had not just plunked down, hey, let's kill one of your companions in the party, and then I'll let you go home, I think I'd be less worried.
I mean, absolutely fair. Things are kind of shaky right now in our party. Um, to let's say one person lost some level of trust in the party because of things happening. Two people have motivations to actually take his offer because it's not just them. One person, I have no idea what's going through their mind, and one person is very wary and is scared because they haven't, I guess, in their backstory and in their current story, have someone actually look out for them. Even in this campaign, they didn't really have someone looking at like actively looking out for them. Uh, so yeah, things are getting a bit shaky. But it's definitely gonna be one hell of a ride. It's gonna take 2 days of in-game time to see what goes on. If someone is gonna, as the song says, light up the funeral pyre.
Oh, the one that you made?
Oh, definitely. You do know that I'm gonna go back to things that I kind of made ish. I'm saying ish because, to be quite honest, I made it using AI, so I'm not gonna claim ownership.
Still, it's a start.
Yeah, and going from there, actually, let's actually go, I guess, into more. How can I say this? More specified ish legends,
Oof,
where it
forgive the
goes
hiccups.
into things. You're okay. Um, where it goes basically into different countries. Because you did mention, I guess, the Jiangxi,
Yeah.
I believe it was. Yeah. So when it comes to sucking blood, we have like it seems they are all over the place, and the only reason I guess they are caught is because they are suckers. Dude. Anyway.
Beg pardon?
It was supposed to be a joke. I fucked it up. Anyway.
Oh.
So yeah, going to different stories, there is one that I guess is somewhere between our current two topics, which is folklore and urban legends. Um, and that would be the. Hopefully, I don't murder this. It's mainly in the Philippines. So if anyone from there or knows the correct pronunciation, please forgive me for possibly murdering the pronunciation. It's the uh, Manananggal. It has so many nana in it.
We need to get a
Which
Filipino national on here at some point to help.
yeah, hopefully we are gonna get guests into our episodes, but eventually. For now, if we're gonna talk about these creatures, hopefully, like you have to forgive me for the bad pronunciation of it. But this creature, I guess, it's something of a vampire that tends to, let's say, kind of um, transforms in a way. It changes shape, but it's let's say the way they describe it is a flying, disembodied, blood-sucking nightmare of a creature.
Interesting.
It, yeah. Oh, trust me, you wouldn't even know, because with this one, um, basically it says here one of the Philippines' most dangerous and bizarre aswangs. So basically, aswang is the umbrella term. So aswang is an umbrella term for various shape-shifting evil creatures in Filipino folklore, such as vampires, ghouls, witches, and so on.
So kind of like a
And
Japanese yokai.
I guess something like that, yeah.
Though yokai are
Uh,
more considered spirits.
Yeah, this one is more like monsters of sorts, I guess. Um,
Though don't get
so
me
the
started on
ma-
the possessed flip flop.
oh god, and don't forget the possessed umbrellas.
When I first learned about like some of the haunted possessed objects that can become yokai, I was like, what the heck am I looking at?
But to be fair, a lot of them tend to turn into like possessed, things, because a lot of them would either have sentimental feelings or basically a kind of emotional energy that attracts said spirits or has certain things manifest in them, which kind of ends up creating said yokai. Anyway, back to the Menengal. Hopefully, I didn't murder. I'm trying not to pronounce it so much so I don't murder the pronunciation. Um, but with this one, it's basically, I guess it's called one of the most, like, of the Philippines' most dangerous and bizarre swans. Um, the Viscera sucking, self segmenting monster at night. Basically, it in daytime it looks like a beautiful woman, and then as the sun goes down, this creature detaches itself, its upper torso, and grows wings after sunset. An intestine dangling nightmare woman with taste for, and this is the scary part, to be quite honest, for fetus, you know, like it targets pregnant women, which is kind of the scary part of it. um what happens is you would see her by day looking like, oh, a beautiful woman walking around. Once the sun goes down, it detaches from its body. The upper torso kind of flies around with intestines, sorry, um dangling around, looking like multiple tails following it, while it grows wings as well. In some occasions, the hands would turn to wings, or it would just grow wings on its back. And in one of the stories that someone told me, a lot of people tried, like, according to this one story, is a man and his friends passed by a house where a lot of people were working on barricading the house, trying not to leave even the smallest hole open because of fear of this creature, because the owner of the house and his wife was pregnant at the time. However, in like sadly, despite everything that they did, it turns out that there was a very small hole in the ceiling that basically, according to them, something similar to a tube, which is, I guess, its tongue or something, uh, managed to get all the way towards where the woman is and basically drain the fetus that was in her stomach and basically ending said pregnancy. Um, which is kind of scary, to be quite honest. Like, if you're pregnant, I guess just leave that location until you at least give birth to said child. Um, However, there are ways of fighting this creature, which is um, actually finding its lower part. When it detaches its body from its lower part, there is a way of killing it, which is simply pouring salt on the lower part, preventing its body from reattaching. Because when it detaches and turns into this monster, you can kill it in two ways. Either stabbing it with, I believe they called it, one second. It's basically stingray tail, and they called it buntut pagi. It's a dried stingray used as a whip-like weapon in the Philippines, usually used to fighting and warding off aswangs and other similar mythical creatures. Um, and sometimes it's used alongside a short knife or sword when fighting such creatures. So you can either try and kill it with that method, or wait until day comes and the sun basically kills it.
interesting. Then again, it seems to be quite a theme of vampires, at least in certain cultures, that they either attack children or they attack pregnant women. In fact, the myth of the Damphir, the half vampire, also came from said kind of interaction where a vampire would is said to attack a pregnant woman, and then the curse transfers to the child, making them a half vampire or a daywalker. That's where you get stories like Blade, one of my favorite comic book characters.
To be quite honest, I didn't know the term Dampier until Dungeons and Dragons, and I was surprised finding out that Blade was actually considered the Dampier, which was definitely interesting.
Yeah, he's a Damphir. There's also the series Blood Rain that also has Rain, the main character, as a Damphir as well. It's I, I'm not exactly sure the region where the Damphir myth originates. Probably was Romania, but it is a classical myth that does exist of what happens when one person interacts with such a thing. I mean, that's often how you find out how incubi and succubi come into the world as well.
I mean, absolutely fair. Fair. Um, Now I guess if we're gonna go towards our, I guess, something of like the last topic, I guess, of this session. Oh, we've talked about a lot of monsters. I fucking love this. Sorry for my language, but I love monsters. Even though I will never mess with spirits or monsters, I would never go into a haunted place or a place that I know would have such creatures, which is why, even though I would love to visit a cottage in a forest or a lake or stay at a lake house, I would never stay until sunset. The moment I get close to sunset, I want to be out faster than the Flash could run, because God knows what you could actually run into. And I believe that's actually why we also keep some of nature. Like sometimes you gotta be very wary about nature and the things that it holds, because we're not the only occupants of this world.
Oh, not by the least. That's why if you go to Ireland, you don't really want to mess with the Fae because the Fae, in and of themselves, are nature pretty much to the extreme. They are what nature is. They're not human, and they're something a little bit more. So that's why you have to respect their inhabitants. Because if you don't, they're going to get mad at you.
So when it comes to Fae, there are actually, I guess, Fae is very much also an umbrella term, I guess,
Oh
to the
yeah.
different creatures, like fairies, pixies, and more, I guess, of creatures.
Well, and not all
And
fairies are nice.
yep, not all of them are Tinkerbell, and Tinkerbell was never actually truly, truly nice. Look what she wanted to do with Wendy.
I mean, if you read the book, she's even worse.
Yeah, I did hear that at one point she did betray the like Peter Pan and Wendy to a point.
Yeah, Disney kind of prettied it up a little bit. But that's a whole nother topic for a whole nother day.
I mean, to be fair, I guess Disney did kind of go nice with a lot of the stories, because if we're gonna go also with the stories that are kind of scary, I forgot about this. So I'm let's say going a bit like back just for with this one topic, with where it comes to books. The series of books by the Grimm brothers,
The Brothers
they
Grimm.
had, yeah, the Brothers Grimm, sorry. They have a lot of interesting creatures, I guess, and stories in those. And believe it or not, I guess Cinderella and some of those other Disney princesses that you love so much actually have more of a dark, let's say, origin in the original books, or the tellings where in the books of the Brothers Grimm. which is actually really beautiful. I recommend actually looking into it.
Well, we have to remember those fairy tales when they were originally written were in a different time, so they wanted to impart more of a moral or a lesson instead of a happy ending sometimes. Though there were a few princesses who got their happy endings, but to a point, if you catch my drift.
Yeah, I absolutely do. I mean, yeah, yeah.
But we
Just
can get
thinking
into
of what
that on
happened.
another episode sometime.
Yes, we definitely should. I mean, I do need to go look more into it because I remember there was, I guess, some movies and also I guess a series in regarding to the Brothers Grimm, and just recently there was an anime also about them. So we're definitely gonna need to talk about that in another episode. However, now touching onto creatures of the urban legends, I believe you mentioned something about a moth.
Yeah, the classic West Virginian Mothman. He's gotten quite popular in recent years, um, but the history kind of goes back to 1966, where there was two young couples from Point Pleasant that said that they spotted some kind of black creature with eyes that glowed red standing near a TNT area, a site that was for the former World War munitions plant in the area. They described him as slender, muscular, but was about 7 feet tall with white wings. Uh, and it's kind of gone from there over time. Sometimes it was described as a large bird with red eyes. Some sightings did come out more insectoid. Due to and this is the funny part, it's due to the popularity of the story. In the 1960s, the Batman TV series at the time actually included a villain called the Killer Moth as kind of a wink and a nod to the Mothman itself. This was back in the early 60s, like late 60s during the Silver Age when it first came out. But we can talk comics another time. But
Also,
because
I
of
think the Mothman kind of holds a bit of something in common between the Mothman and the Banshee, being basically an omen as well. Like in some stories or some, I guess, descriptions of the Mothman, if I remember correctly, they said that any location that he would actually appear in, he basically appears as an omen that something bad is going to happen in that location, like a disaster is going to happen.
Yeah, I've heard certain stories like that. Mothman also falls into a particular subtype known as cryptids. So you can find cryptids all over the world, but unfortunately, a lot of them are in the States. It seems that we, as Americans, have a habit of coming up with rather fantastical stories, or at least having more fantastical stories crop up in recent years, like Bigfoot or Sasquatch, and the footage involved with that. Or take another particular urban legend, which is the Jersey Devil, which is located around New Jersey. It is said to have the head of a goat and the wings of a bat standing on these little spindly legs. And the first sightings was with in 1735, according to some of the research I did, with a family known as the Leeds in South Jersey. That when the mom became pregnant a 13th time, she cursed the child in frustration, declaring that the child would be the devil. The mother had the kid, and it said that the child transformed into a creature with hooves, a goat's head, bat wings, and a forked tail. Uh, it disappeared after that, and they say that the child's father was the devil himself, but there have been sightings, or at least stories, of the Jersey Devil ever since. Mostly what is now in Atlantic County in New Jersey, so the southern end. But some of its story has been kind of exaggerated over time, but it's gotten quite popular, or at least on the east coast of the United States. And there have been quite a few articles about it, people doing research in on it. There have been so many different stories of when this thing has been sighted. There was one back in 1925 near the Greenwich Township. A local farmer saw it. There's also sightings as far back as 1820, where someone claimed to have seen it while hunting in Bordentown at the Bordentown estate at about that time. But some of the more recent sightings were in the late to early 1900s. Some as far down as Delaware or Maryland, which is quite fascinating for something known as the Jersey Devil. But it's quite a fascinating story. I've personally never seen it. I've only ever heard of the Jersey Devil. But that's at least some American folklore, for American urban legends for you. There are quite a few other countries that have some fascinating urban legends, which I'm sure you have some insight on there, Tamashi.
Well, you spoke about cryptids. That definitely kind of got me going on a few things. Um, I guess this episode's going to be mentioning a lot of blood sucking because a cryptid that I can think of that also kind of mimics the fact that it has a bit of an animalistic body is the chupacabra.
Yes, the Mexican chupacabra myth. It's gotten quite popular in the last decade or so.
Yeah, so according to some of the descriptions of the chupacabra, and this is to the best of my knowledge, so don't take it at like as something that's 100%. But in a lot of the research that I've done, it basically looks like a hairless or a sickly dog or hyena or like something similar close to it's something between a hyena, dog, and a wolf of sorts that looks very sickly and hairless. And the thing about the reason I said blood sucking because it basically comes out and tends to target cattle, like sheep, goats, and some other farm creatures, and tends to drain their blood. However, I guess some movies kind of had the creature target humanoids, like humans as well.
Yeah, well,
But
the
that's
name
definitely something.
the name in Spanish does mean goat sucker, so, or at least so
Oh,
I've
that's
heard.
one hell of a sucker. That's one hell of a sucker.
Even when I try to get away from talking about vampires, you don't let me get away from trying to talk about vampires.
I mean, blood sucking seems to be something that's very famous when I guess it comes to monsters, especially quite lately. I'm not sure why that is, to be quite honest.
Well, it's also not exactly lately either. Uh, these kind of myths have been around for centuries at this point. Like I said, there's so many different cultures that have something akin to the vampire or something with a similar theme. There's just something universal about fearing for losing your life or losing your soul or losing the blood in your veins. The Christian aspect of the vampire myth in Europe is the phrase from the Bible that the blood is the life, i.e., your blood is tied to your very soul's essence. So, in truth, by a vampire draining your blood, they aren't just causing you to lose a precious life giving fluid in your body, but they are taking part of your soul. That's why there are other forms of food that a vampire or something like a vampire often takes in different cultures. Like I said with the Jiangshi, it wasn't actually blood. They would be sucking out life energy itself rather than the humors of the body.
Also, I think this was also mentioned in one of the stories of the Brothers Grimm. Um, it seems like this took a bit of a how can I say this, a supernatural twist to it when the story was told. But there are also people that like before we didn't know about this, I guess, until now, where people would need blood because they would have like certain medical conditions, where they would need, I guess, blood transfusion or something like that. But back in the day, instead of doing so, they would actually go for either drinking blood or, in this one case of the Countess Elizabeth, hopefully I don't pronounce like murder her last name, uh,
You mean Bathory?
Bathory.
Yep, Countess Elizabeth
Um,
Bathory. Ah, yes, that is quite the story.
yeah, where she basically murdered hundreds of girls and bathed in their blood to supposedly keep herself beautiful. And
Yeah, it
this
was the
was
whole youth
back in
thing.
the 17th century serial killer of
Yeah,
sorts.
and then she got locked up and killed for that. Which, honestly, she deserved for everything that she did to those poor girls. And I don't think it
In
actually helped her stay youthful.
in Brothers Grimm, I believe there was something, a mention of something similar. Um Basically, I guess in one of the movies or series, where they did show that there was this countess, or yeah, it's a movie, the Grimm movie. There was a scene of basically this countess, or they kind of showed her similar to a queen of sorts. Yeah, they made her a queen in that movie, where she basically would, let's say, trick girls, bring them to her, and basically murder them and basically drain their blood. Also, she, I guess, and this is where also another supernatural aspect of hers came. She would have this thing that she would stick in a man's heart, making him fall unbelievably in love with her, basically enslaving him to her whims and her orders, charming him in a sort of way.
Yeah, I
And
need
if
to
I'm
watch
not
that movie.
wrong, also, if I'm not wrong, something similar-ish was shown. Well, similar, not as in the blood, but more into the controlling of sorts. It was touched about in, what was it called? It's a kid movie, Narnia,
Oh,
where one of the brothers had glass in his eye that made him kind of, I guess, uh, kind of gravitate towards the Ice Queen.
yeah, that would be The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe.
Yeah, that's definitely something. Um, anyway, away from blood and bloodsuckers to something
Wait, no,
more.
that wasn't Narnia. That was
Sorry.
The Snow Queen by Hans Christian
Oh,
Andersen.
really?
Yeah,
Okay, my bad. Sorry, I mixed things up, I guess.
it's okay. Sometimes it's hard to keep it all straight, especially when you can see inspirations for certain parts of a story in another.
Yeah, absolutely fair. However, now going to, I guess, something more modern. Um, this started as a creepypasta. I believe we have touched on creepypastas in our old episode. A little old brain. Sorry, my brain is going through a million things, so that even something that was yesterday becomes old. The first, so going back to the first episode, where we had mentioned creepypastas. I don't quite remember if we have mentioned the Slender Man.
I did.
Okay, so you mentioned him. My brain possibly was too scattered to actually remember who
Oh,
mentioned
you're
them.
fine.
Um,
But what did you want to bring up about
so
him?
okay, so the Slender Man, I guess, is more of the modern, let's say, I guess, urban legends or creatures. He was mentioned in a creepypastas. However, I guess he got a bit of a following and a fan um, following of sorts, to the point to him actually, let's say, upgrading from a creature in a creepypasta to actually becoming a bit of an urban legend. Also, kind of leading to a tragedy at one point. Um, he's basically described as a very thin man with elongated, I guess, legs and arms, and also, I guess, fingers, you can say, um, with a white head of sorts. Like, think of a mannequin's head of sorts. No facial features or anything like that. Just pale white, as white as a sheet of paper, with also black tentacles basically behind his back. And his height kind of differs. He's known as a very tall person, and tends to stalk a victim before he captures them. And he seems to stalk mainly girls, believe it or not, to the point that Slenderman actually has proxies in girls.
Huh, didn't know that. I'd only ever watched series like Everyman Hybrid and Marble Hornets uh, on YouTube. That's where most of my stuff came from. Or the Something Awful forums. It's kind of interesting to see how the internet will take a creepy story and just kind of push it further off into the realms of what's possible.
Yeah.
Though I believe
But
you
it's
wanted to talk about something very similar, which was the Black Eyed Children.
yes. So the Black Eyed Children kind of scares me more than Slender Man, because I believe I may have witnessed one um back like many years back.
Oh, really?
And Black Eyed, yes, and trust me, it's a scary thing, but I want to say it's not, because it kind of goes against um what they're known for, because the child eyes I've seen was during the day. Most black-eyed children tend to appear at night, and just as their name kind of indicates, they are kids that don't have, I forgot what it's called, the whites around the eyes, the white area of the eyes, not the iris. It's the other one. Um,
The sclera?
I think so. So basically, their eyes are full black, no other color, just black on black. And they tend to give this really eerie um, atmosphere to them. And they would usually, what they would do mainly is usually ask you for entrance into something that belongs to you, whether it's your house, cabin, car, trailer, or whatever. And here's the thing: they would sometimes sound, when you're not looking at them, they would sound like they have emotion in their voice, but the moment you actually look at them, they have a very eerie expression on their faces. Um, and it's almost emotionless way of speaking. Uh, very, very creepy of sorts. Um, And if you do let them in to your house or to your car or anywhere of that that basically belongs to you or something similar, they tend to drag with them misfortune and other things as well. Um, where you could end up with a disaster or your house becomes possessed or anything similar to that. And they would try to converse with you, but the way they converse, their voices or their way of speech tends to be very emotionless of sorts. um, However, there is one thing that I found online that was very, very interesting. Um, it turns out that there's someone online that believes that they have found a frequency that tends to attract black-eyed kids.
Yeah, interesting.
So what he did also is, it seems that his house of sorts has two entrances. So it's like you enter one place, then you have to enter through a second door. So the entrance to the first door, or I'm guessing called the threshold or something, um, it's full glass. So you can basically see if someone is outside. I'm guessing this person lives in a place where the weather is really nice, so he could sit in that one place and kind of, enjoy the view and such without actually being outside. But anyway, back to the actual topic, and hopefully my brain doesn't get too distracted.
I
um,
think you're doing just fine.
he played the supposed sound, and it's, according to his description, is a sound that possibly humans cannot really hear. Similar to how the dog whistles kind of work. Um, So it's like a frequency that people cannot hear, but the black-eyed kids are kind of attracted to them. However, playing it, I guess, a few days in a row kind of did give him a result where a kid did appear at one point and tried to look inside. It stayed standing there for several hours looking into his house. I'm guessing kind of confused or trying to find a way in or where the frequency possibly is coming from. Later on, as like I guess a few days later, after his experiment as well, he was driving back. I'm not sure if his car broke down or he saw something, and he did something that I believe is kind of stupid if you're dealing with something similar like supernatural. Is he actually went down from his car and started looking around, even though it's nighttime. Um, And I don't remember much here, but it seemed that they were stalking him for a while. And yeah, many believe those kids come from a different dimension or a different, um, let's say, a place or plane, and they seem to have something with them and drag something with them. Some believe them aliens, some believe them supernatural. There are many beliefs when it comes to these creatures, but honestly, for me, just having something spooky being childlike is, God, scary, super, 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 super scary. That's why, like, some of the video games, like Fear, scared the hell out of me because the main villain in that game was a child. Well, a ghost of a child, but still a child.
Yeah, until
I
you
don't
get
want to
to the
deal with
third game.
kids. Yeah, I believe that's where it basically kind of grew up. And this is kind of the crazy part of that game. Supposedly her mental powers or whatever um, kind of allowed her body to get stronger, or her spirit to get stronger even after death, and she continued even growing up. And quite an interesting story, like for that game. If you want, you can look it up and look up the lore for that story. But back to Black Eyed Kids, I'm not gonna mess with no supernatural kid. I am sorry, I'm not touching them with even a 10-foot pole.
That's entirely fair. Oftentimes, so I've heard that demons or devils will take the guises of kids because they are innocent. If it's a true child's spirit, it wouldn't be harmful to you.
Yeah, whether it's a true child spirit or it's evil entity. I mean, I don't have the knowledge of dealing with such creatures, so I am staying far away from anything that even
Hey, that's what you
is
have me
child
for.
sized. Yeah, you go deal with those. I'm gonna be running for the hills. I'm sorry. If you if you're trying to approach them and deal with them, I'm running for the hills. You're on your own, lady. Sheesh.
Hey, I'm an immortal 300-year-old witch. I think I know what I'm doing.
Okay, noted. Oh God, that explains a lot of your spooky stuff.
What do you
You've
think
had
I've been doing?
experiences.
What do you think I've been doing with it? Why do you think my house is so big? I have multiple floors. There's a cathedral that we were in before. Now you've seen my library. Who knows where we're gonna go next time? Maybe the music room.
Well, we'll see where we're actually gonna go next time. Um, but before we actually go anywhere, would you like to possibly add to maybe any urban legends that you actually know of? I guess aside from the Mothman.
I mean, there's a few. Like I said, Jersey Devil, Mothman, those are classics. There's also the Himalayan myth of the Yeti. It's a little bit more folklore, but it's also still a modern day cryptid. It's said to guard the it's said to guard Mount Everest, and should you tread in the wrong place or disturb the wrong thing, it will kill you. It's an elusive creature. Some speculate that it is the cousin of the Sasquatch, aka Bigfoot, here in the States. But it's a large creature, often described as white fur, almost ape like in appearance, but much larger than your classic great ape that you'd see in the jungles of Africa or anywhere else in Asia or Africa. And it has a very, very fierce temperament when angered. People often will leave offerings to the Yeti in order to avoid getting it angry at them in the local population, at least from what I heard. One of my favorite rides at Disney is Expedition Everest, where they've actually brought in research about the area in Tibet that often is associated with the Yeti myth.
Yeah, the only thing about that I actually know about Yetis is they have amazing ice cones. Just make sure to avoid the yellow ice cones.
Monsters Inc., huh?
I mean, that's as close to a Yeti that I can actually get to, I guess, with knowledge, to be quite honest. I used to believe that they might be like basically a Bigfoot that went to, icy places, or like, oh, it's in winter time or something.
Well, like I said, modern cryptozoologists or cryptid seekers will speculate that the Yeti and the Sasquatch, or AKA Bigfoot, are related somehow because they both have similar appearances and temperaments. Though, don't go messing with Sasquatch unless you know what you're doing, because I don't want to see what happens when you make that guy mad.
Oh, I'm definitely not getting anywhere close to him, especially after I see the way he kills people in the game Bigfoot on Steam. Hell, I don't want to be impaled. No, thank you.
Of course, not all urban
I've
legends.
seen.
Sorry. Though,
No, it's okay. I was just gonna ramble about like I've seen enough from Vlad the Impaler that you be impaled by a giant ape or the missing link, as he's known as well.
I forgot that he was called that. But not all urban legends are cryptids. There's also stories like the Hook Man or other stories of similar nature that speak on serial killers or things that happened a long time ago that kind of spun themselves out of control, kind of like an early pre-internet creepypasta. It's often what an urban legend is.
I mean, you've got similar creatures or like I guess entities that, as you mentioned, started as serial killers and kind of went into the world of the supernatural. And you can mention the very well known Freddy Krueger. And I forgot what is called, the guy with the honey or the bees or whatever. He has a hook.
The Candyman. Now, Candyman was actually based
Candyman.
off of an urban legend, uh, though kind of paired a little bit with the legend of Bloody Mary. You know, saying your name in a mirror 3 times, you summon her. So that's where part of
Yeah,
that
very much
movie
like
came from.
Strad.
You don't. I can't. I can't even with you. I'm supposed to not have to talk about Strut every 5 seconds.
I mean, absolutely fair. I mean, I'm trying, but it just comes to mind, you know? But yeah,
What is he,
basically,
Beetlejuice?
yeah. So, oh, okay. That actually brings me to a point. It seems that a lot of those entities have something to do with the number three for some reason. Beetlejuice has like to have his name mentioned 3 times in a row. Basically unbroken. I believe the same goes with the Bloody Mary and the Candyman as well.
Candyman is actually 5 times in a mirror. That's basically the main similarities between the movie Candyman, the story in it. The thing is that some of the name and story was taken from an actual serial killer as well for that movie. And Freddy Krueger was based off of a story that the creator Wes Craven heard about in Asia, where men were just dropping dead suddenly of in their sleep for no reason, and they'd like stayed up for a long time, and then all of a sudden just died with no explanation. So that's where the inception for Freddy came from. Freddy is a dream demon that will stalk and hunt those in the dreamland, mostly children, uh, that he wishes to kill.
You mentioned them staying awake and then basically dying, right?
Yeah, it was a sudden, unexplained death that they had found. I believe actually the story originated either in Japan or China at the time that caught Wes Craven's attention.
So there was, if I recall, a story back about the sleep experiment. I'm not sure which country it was mentioned to be
Oh, the
done
Russian
in.
sleep experiment. That's a classic creepypasta.
Yeah. But with that one, it supposedly went with the fact that there was something similar to an entity or entities that tend to live in our shared consciousness. However, because of our sleep shielding us from those things, the sleep experiment kind of exposed the people in the experiment to those creatures, which then tried to basically take over. And it seems that the very second someone actually goes to sleep or is put to sleep, they die almost instantly. So that was something definitely. Um, and that plus one of the SCP stories kind of inspired one of my TikTok characters, which is Benny the Teddy.
Oh, really?
Um, yeah. It's because on my TikTok, for those that I believe I did mention it last time, that I'm a cosplayer, and I do sometimes tend to do skits on TikTok where I have different characters that I tend to wear their cosplay, and I kind of made them up. One of them is Benny the Teddy, and Benny the Teddy, like if you look at my videos, it's almost there is consistency, but also no consistency between the skits with Benny the Teddy. It's mainly because Benny the Teddy isn't a person. He's basically an entity that lives in the shared consciousness of people and basically kind of manifests in different people for different reasons. And the only shared aspect is the bear mask, the creepy bear mask that he tends to wear.
Interesting.
Yeah, that's something I kind of came up with inspired by I think SCP-5000, if
Fascinating.
I'm not wrong. Also talking about SCP-5000 story, if you look it up on YouTube, you will see that there was a mention of the SCP Foundation basically unleashing all the SCPs to eliminate humanity in or in attempt to eliminate this creature that was in the shared consciousness. However, touching on Bigfoots and SCP, there is a mention actually in SCP for Bigfoots, which is SCP-1000, where they believe that there was a civilization of Bigfoots, that they were kind of similar to the Atlantis, how they're like super advanced and so on. However, they lost a war against the Homo sapiens, aka us. um, and basically they were kind of rendered to their current condition of either escaping us or bit of a mindless ape-ish living of sorts.
Interesting.
Also, mhm. Also, touching a bit on the previous title that the Bigfoot actually has, which is the missing link, is the belief that Darwin's theory of evolution, of where we started as basically monkeys or something of the sorts, and slowly evolved into primates and so on and so forth until we reached humans. So there is a bit of a point, like between us being humans and the step before us, where it's people believe that Bigfoot might be where it belongs, that actually Bigfoot is humans before they became humans.
Interesting.
So yeah, there is definitely a lot of things that tend to touch, whether on science, on folklore, or on ancient beliefs. And to be honest, I don't think you and I could cover them all. So
Maybe for another
if
time.
it's okay, we could actually definitely end. This is a message for me to hopefully our listeners and viewers. If you have any of your own stories with folklore, classic monster origins or something of the sorts, or even scary books that you recommend, and hopefully I can't give you that promise because I'm too much of a scaredy cat, unlike Lunar here. but I am going but I am going to give it a try and read them, um, and actually take a look at them. And I apologize if I have kind of murdered any of the pronunciations for different creatures and monsters. But also another thing, please make sure to uh, let's say keep most of these urban legends, folklores, and stories mainly away from people who are very gullible or from kids, to avoid any kind of incidents, like some of the things that happened before. I'm not gonna mention them right now, but because some people tend to believe them too much, and a lot of people tend to go to very dark places in their minds that they want to kind of do stupid things and things that wouldn't be recommended. And keep in mind, a lot of these are just myths and fictional things. um, so please make sure to be safe when you look into any of these things, because some of these things, I believe you've mentioned this to me, Lunar, earlier before the session or before the episode, that some of these things are better not mentioned and better not looked into, because I guess even mentioning them tends to attract their attention.
At least to the
So it's
cultures that
best
they
to
come
avoid them.
from.
I mean, absolutely fair to actually with that one.
But we'll pick up with our little discussions next time on our next episode. What it'll be on next time, who knows? But thanks again for stopping by for Curse of Geek and our Spooktober Part 2. Thank you so much, guys, and see you next time. I'll be in the
Well, see
library
you.
trying to torture Tamashi.
Oh God. She's gonna make me read some of her scary books.
Oh,
You
you
know,
don't think I didn't?
hey, one of her books actually had a tentacle come out of it, which is kind of creepy. Tried to reach out, grab me, but yeah,
That's why you don't go messing around with the book that's labeled Cthulhu on the cover, you goober. You frickin' goober. I told you not to touch that one.
that one looked a bit too innocent. It looked like it had some, like, possibly actiony things, something that would look interesting. I mean, it had pictures compared to most of your books, so pictures attracted me.
Pictures of an eldritch horror.
I mean, seeing too many words scared me. So seeing pictures was a bit of an upgrade to me. But yeah, I didn't know the pictures would reach out of the book. Oh God.
Look, as long
Anyway,
as long as you're not touching the book labeled Jumanji and anything else. Also, don't let Strahd know I have his tome stuck in here. He's gonna kill me.
yeah, trust me. If I ever see Strad, I'm running the other way just immediately. He probably will catch up, but I'm gonna just point to wherever you are, and I will run faster even. But yeah, before we end, I just want to say this. If you ever want to reach out to us, make sure to look up on different social medias. I believe TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube. And hopefully, we are going to be on Twitch eventually under the curse of Geek.
Yep. And we'll see you all in the next one. Bye, guys.
Good thing. Take care.